Good morning. I'm glad to be here, and I thank God for this opportunity. I want to share about impactful mentorship, demonstrating the process of impactful mentorship. I saw a quote. Somebody said, if you can't explain what you are doing in a process, you don't know what you're doing. And so I think a process tells us how, or gives us examples on how we can succeed ourselves. Being in a university context, I have a lot of students' numbers on my contact on the phone. And I see all sorts of memes, they are common nowadays. Towards graduation, somebody will post a stadium with one person and say the process. And then a stadium with many people, a full stadium saying the congratulations. Meaning, I walked this process alone. I don't know if that is true. Maybe it is the discrepancy between what they think they need and what the mentors think they need. As another one wrote, if during my graduation somebody gives a speech that they supported me, I'm going to take the microphone from them. This sense of dissatisfaction may stem from that the graduate didn't have a mentor, or we mentors didn't know what he needed, or what he needed was not ours to solve. I don't know, but there seems to be a problem because people feel not supported. A lady called Jacqueline Corney, a transformational expert in Kenya, who posts on a group of ladies on Facebook, says, mentorship is a relationship between a more experienced or knowledgeable person, that is the mentor, and less experienced or knowledgeable individual, that is the mentee, aimed at providing guidance, support, and advice to help the mentee grow personally and professionally. And later, he asked people to write mentors that mentor them and say something to them. And some of them tried to thank a few people, but there were not many posts. Demonstrating the process of impactful mentorship. I'm looking at the story of Elisha and his students, the company of prophets that he had in his theological school. Impactful here refers to effective, influential, powerful, fruitful. And you are reading from 2 Kings 6, 1-7. 2 Kings 6, 1-7. Now I'm reading from NIV. An axe head floats, verse 1. The company of prophets said to Elisha, look at the place where we meet with you is too small for us. Let us go to the Jordan where each one of us can get a pole, and let us build a place there for us to meet. And he said, go. Then one of them said, won't you please come with your servants? I will, Elisha replied, and he went with them. They went to the Jordan and began to cut down the trees. As one of them was cutting down a tree, the iron axe head fell into the water. Oh, my Lord, he cried out, it was borrowed. Verse 6, the man of God asked, where did it fall? When he showed him the place, Elisha cut a stick and threw it there and made the iron float. Lift it out, he said. The man reached out his hand and took it. Now, from this passage, I want to propose that demonstrating impactful mentorship includes the following. First, it nurtures a sense of belonging. In verse 1 to 2a, it nurtures a sense of belonging. A sense of belonging means a sense of affiliation and acceptance in a group, whether it is family, church, work, or community. Sometimes I'll ask in a church, if you looked at your phone and you are in trouble at 3 a.m., for the people in this church, check if there's anyone you can give a call, and they will help you. And you can see the blank faces, and they belong to the community of the church. We pastors know that sometimes when people come to church, they really do not have support in a family. But when they come to a church, they really can look at your phone and they can say, they can't find anyone they can call at 3 a.m. for help. That means they don't have a sense of belonging, they come for them to fulfill the spiritual need, but they really don't feel that cared for to belong there, even to ask for help. Now, this company of the prophets of Elisha, when they came together, they seem to have had a sense of belonging. What are the indicators that tells me they had a sense of belonging? The first thing is that they were settled. They are a company. They are living together. They are settled. When I was doing my PhD, we were told, I forget the name, but I liked what he said, a Korean pastor who said, we pastors will bring people to a church, they'll get converted, and then we'll take them directly to the discipleship class. There is another stage we miss that is called settling them in the church. We don't settle them in the church, and they have to observe and copy. Rarely do we do that. When I was younger in primary school, I went to a Catholic primary school. And we were all supposed to attend the mass for the whole community from outside because we were in the main parish in the area. I was not Catholic, I'm still not Roman Catholic, but we had to copy, we had just had to observe and copy. They go down quickly, you go down. Of course, you are kind of a second late because they are praying and all of a sudden everybody is going to them. So we used to have this trick. If you don't know what they are doing, just kneel permanently. Because they surprise you. Nobody settled you. You're just in that school and you are required to attend that service. But these ones were settled. They became a company. And what follows tells you they were truly a company. Another indicator is that they gave feedback comfortably. Look at the place we meet. This is too small. Another indicator is that they initiated the process with a suggestion. Let us go to Jordan. They had the whole plan. Another indication is that they were inclusive. Verse 2, each of us, all of us, each of us is going to cut a pole. Another indication is that they were purposeful, a place for us to meet. Another indication is that they were united in mission and vision. They must have discussed this before they came to the prophet. So they agreed on the mission and vision of this. They had ownership. Who comes to your house and tells you, I want to extend this place? They had ownership of the process. No wonder they were that comfortable. They practiced leadership skills. Don't we like that in our students? Someone must have said, guys, we can go talk to the prophet. He's going to allow us. What do we tell him? And then another indicator, they were involved in their own process of training enough to apply the skills. Paulo Freire says, when you do education, it must give birth to themes that are owned by the learners. That's when you know it is effective. Our influence in mentorship will be measured by indicators, not the numbers. I can supervise 10 PhD students, but indicators of whether I made a change, that's the one I'm looking for. The way they go out there and say, what happened when we were doing it? I can sign at the end, and it could have been horrible. Them, they may not have felt comfortable. It's not the numbers, it's the indicators. What are they saying? Are they saying, I actually acknowledge that, yeah, I was taught by this person and he influenced me? Those of us that were in Professor Cole's class, they knew you could not get away with anything. Do you know there are students that think if they're too loud, they'll get a better grade. If they are too saying hello to the lecturer, they'll get better grades. And some of them influence some of us like that. But I don't know if John Jusu is there. But we know if you're in Professor Cole's class, you got away with nothing. And you knew you deserved what you got because the comment is on the side. So they're agreeing with me. I can see Dr. Mukanya, you got away with nothing. Nobody ever said that I'm a favorite of Dr. Cole. No, you will get what you deserve. And some of us learned justice quietly in class, such that when you grade and you give back the papers and you give the code or the marking scheme, and you say, anyone with complaints, nobody stands up and said, Dr. Makau, I wrote the same answer as so-and-so, and you gave them a mark, and you didn't give me a mark. We learned justice, Professor Cole. That's the feedback. Number 2, impactful mentorship builds relationship alignment. Relationship alignment, verses 2b to 4. Alignment is a noun that talks about corrective positioning of something so that the functioning is coordinated. Even you, the way you walk, if you walk together like this, you won't walk, you have to jump. But coordination is you step forward and the other leg steps again in order to be coordinated, so you are aligned. Those of you that are drivers can tell a truck coming and it has no alignment. It's coming towards you, but it's facing the side. So with relationships, we can have a relationship. I can be your student, but we don't have an alignment. Relationship is the way two or more people connect. This connection is observed in the way people function together. It's not automatic. No wonder in social awareness, that is an element of emotional intelligence, we say there has to be relationship management. If you're managing it, that means it's not automatic. You have to work at it. Can you believe it that somebody is managing us here? Somebody is managing us. Nothing is just like this. Somebody is announcing the house, whatever. Somebody is telling us the time. Somebody has managed all that. It's not just happening by itself. That's true of relationship. You have to manage it. And you have to understand the people around you, the temperaments, what triggers them, such that sometimes one thing is not a big deal to a student, to another one is a big deal. I usually tell my student, you must have self-awareness. A simple thing as you two get a D and one of you needs to sleep for a week to get over it. That's how different you are, and they laugh like that's the truth. Another one is like, whatever, a D, life continues. We need to know that there are those kind of people, and yesterday we talked about diversity, which helps us in knowing that you may need to study more, you may have to be intentional with the mentees than we probably can think about. So in this verse, there are indicators that there was relationship alignment. The first one is that Elisha agreed with their suggestion and he gave them their blessing, his blessing in 2b. He said, go. They said, we want to go, and he said, go. There wasn't like, what do you think you're doing? Where did you meet? What else did you talk about? It was a good suggestion. He didn't need to refuse it. It's true, the place was small, and they were interested in being training, so he agreed with their suggestion, gave them his blessing. He says, go. He then accepted the invitation, 3a. He says, I will come with you. He then supported them with his presence in verse 4. He went with them. In chaplaincy, we say there's something called ministry of presence. Many of us leaders, you can just be in a place and things are happening, and you are saying nothing. But your presence is there, and it's a presence of blessing. I'm not talking about the guests that come to your house and put their feet on your coffee table with their shoes. That's not a blessed presence. You can be, and that's why sometimes our mentees will ask us, Dr. Makau, will you come with us too? Because they feel like if you are there, there's something that is going to work out. And if you are not there, it may not work out. And if you are there, they're so comfortable and things begin moving. And you may not be doing anything. You may just be sitting on a seat somewhere just chatting, or they know you are there and they feel comfortable. Ministry of presence. And so there are those indicators that there was relationship alignment between the mentor and the mentee. Relationship like this needs investments of all sorts. It just won't happen. And those of us in school are happy. We are not like a church where you can have the same members for 60 years. In a school, every year you get a new group, and you feel like they can pass. But you never know what you're doing to them if you pay the right attention and you bless them with their ministry of presence as you listen to them and acknowledge their great ideas. And number 3, impactful mentorship thrives in compassion. Verse 5 to 7. Verse 5 to 7. This is my definition of compassion. Compassion is walking alongside someone in their most vulnerable status or situation and leaving them feeling dignified. Walking alongside someone in their most vulnerable situation or status and leaving them feeling dignified. It is them feeling dignified. And the story of the Good Samaritan is the best example we have. He didn't know the man. He was beaten. He wasn't talking. He wasn't dressed. He couldn't identify him with anything. But he was in the most vulnerable situation, and he walked alongside him and made sure he got the help. When you look at the story of Elisha, he demonstrated compassion. His response to the prophet's distress was pathetic. An axe head is heavy and slips out of the handle and goes into the water. Some of us have cut wood, and some of you maybe you've not. But I've cut wood. I've cut down a tree, cut the wood, and taken it to my mother's house. I have that skill. And normally, it can easily slip out of the handle. Unfortunately, they went down to Jordan, which is a huge river, and it drops. So when it drops, it goes to the bottom because it is heavy. And so it's said that in those days, this was so expensive, people couldn't own them anyhow. And if you lost one, you could probably be a slave to the owner for the rest of your lifetime. And so it is a distressful situation. Like when your student calls you and tells you, Prof, my computer just crashed. Oh, we identify with that. Just crashed. And I was going to bring this paper. So this axe head has gone off. And we used to be very careful when we are cutting the tree because it could get off and hit somebody or come back to you. But unfortunately for this one, it dropped in the water, went to the bottom. And so how do we see the compassion of Elisha? We have indicators. And I think educators like indicators. First one, cognitive empathy. Cognitive empathy is the ability to understand and recognize the thoughts and feelings of another person. It involves mentally placing yourself in someone else's shoes and using your experiences and knowledge to comprehend their emotions. Cognitive empathy helps us think past our initial biases and have more accurate knowledge about the contents of another person's mind. Meaning, as human beings, we have our biases. There's always that problematic student who will say, Madam, what do you think about this? The other day you said this. Is this the truth? That one who is just sitting, comes in with funny shoes. He's never looking kept. He's never looking polite or says anything politely. He's always harassing other students. There's that tendency to have a bias, and because we did diversity yesterday, you know those things. There's a person from another culture. In Kenya, we have more than 40 tribes. You can imagine being a combined class and have all these tribes that I know don't like women. And they have some initiations against women now, and I feel like saying something to point at them. You can have your bias. You know? So don't say you don't have a bias. It's possible to have a bias. So cognitive empathy is supposed to ride over your biases. Elisha's response to the prophet's cry, where did it fall, is appropriate to the prophet's cry. Because he said, oh no, my Lord. He cried out, it was borrowed. In other versions, alas, it was borrowed. Now, alas is an interjection used as an exclamation. To express grief, concern, it's like if you are Kenyan, you'd hold your head and say, Kimeniramba. Now, Kenyans, if you know the English word for that, you can tell the others. Because you know everything has just gone south. Off the tracks. It's like a train off the tracks. You can't hold it. The head has already dropped. That's when you know there's no solution. But this prophet Elisha has cognitive empathy because the moment he says, alas, it was borrowed, he goes, where did it fall? Appropriate response to the cry. So when there's cognitive empathy, it is a boost for someone else's confidence. When there is cognitive dissonance, it creates emotional disasters. It creates emotional disasters. Somebody is telling you how they're feeling, and you're responding differently. Elisha responded to the need the way the mentee expressed it. I always tell my students, don't tell somebody it's not a big deal. It's not your big deal, it's their big deal. So you need to match that. So the way the prophet expressed the need is the way Elisha responded, cognitive empathy. It was words for words, tone with tone, emotion with emotion. There's a match. The way he responded, there's a match in everything. So what the next indicator is validation. Validation. Invalidation is like telling somebody the way you express your pain is the way it is. The way you express your pain is the way it is. I agree. The way you're expressing it is the way you're feeling. Many times we think we can edit people's experience. It is their experience. If you tell us they picked you from the airport and then they took a different route than we thought they should take, it is your experience. We don't have to say, no, you can't have taken that route. You are describing it in words. You are telling us, and we can see there's a road like that in Nairobi, but we are saying, no, you can't have taken that route. We are changing it. We were not there. When you try to minimize somebody's or trivialize somebody's response to their emotions, you are telling them it is not the way it is. But validation means the way you express it is the way it is to you. And so you're in agreement. And so the man of God says here, where did it fall? It has fallen. The way you're screaming, you're thinking of how you're going to be somebody's slave. When we learn validation, people stop from moving from person to person looking for support. Because the thing is, if I call Verena or I text her and I tell her I'm in trouble, and she tells me, it can't be that serious, I'm going to text another one and say, Dr. Florence, you know this is going in my life, and it can't be that bad. I have to look for another person. That's how people move from person to person, pastor to pastor, because nobody is giving them validation that their problem is what it is according to what they are saying. But you know why we do this is because we lack emotional courage. Emotional courage is the ability to sit with people that are hurting and you look comfortable sitting with them. Like you're not in a hurry, you're not changing this, but I'm sitting with you. Most of us lack emotional courage. That's why you think your friends are not trustworthy, but you're telling your stories to the wrong people. They don't have emotional courage. And I tell my students, you are the pastors. If you tell a congregation that your wife beat you, that's too much for the congregant. They have to look for somebody else to tell. They don't have the emotional courage to carry that. And so you, as a mentor, and I, we must have the emotional courage to validate things that are going to, it must be the way it is. The way you are feeling must be true, because you're the one feeling it and expressing it. Now, in my presence, we might move from that pain towards healing, but it won't work until I've acknowledged it. Validation. Another indicator is emotional involvement. Emotional involvement. When he showed him the place, Elisha cut a stick and threw it there and made the iron to float. In psychology, people talk about emotional withholding. Emotional withholding is the opposite of emotional involvement. We know that with our spouses sometimes. They just decide I'm withholding the emotional support from you. Oh, okay, they walk away. I'm feeling like this, they don't say anything, whatever we want them to say. With emotional withholding, you withhold your own power to your favor only. But with emotional involvement, you release your power to help other people. So Elisha here was emotionally involved. He cut the stick and threw it there so that he can help. Now, this is not the first time Elisha is performing a miracle, but you know, this is a miracle of certain magnitude because the iron head is heavy and it has already fallen to the bottom. But he could have lectured him. What did you think you were doing? Why didn't you cut the tree a little bit away from the edge of the river? Why are you never careful? Why didn't you save your dissertation in many other places? A lot of stuff. He could have responded differently. But look at the way he says, he shares his power. Sometimes I tell my students, when you are writing a dissertation, keep saving every draft to your email. Send it to yourself so that if your computer crashes, you can access it easily from another computer because it's online. You can save it in the cloud or whatever, but this is another way of saving it. You can always access it. Because I know and I've done it. Sometimes I tell them, scan all your certificates and send them to yourself. So that if you're somewhere or they get lost or they get whatever, water problems, it's flooding in Kenya now, you will say, oh, I have some copies in my email. Yeah, I like to share that because it's going to help them say, oh my, that's a great idea, Daktari. And they scan them and send them to yourself. Also, if you apply for something when you're away from your house, they ask you, do you have your certificates? You say, sure. You go to your email, search for them, send them. Elisha here, he could have just stopped and lectured this prophet. Are you the only one who is clumsy? But he just shared his power because he had the power to perform the miracles. The other indicator is empowerment. Empowerment is to make someone stronger and more confident, especially in controlling their life or participating in claiming their rights or more comfort. And in verse 7, Elisha told him, lift it out. Could have just picked it himself and said, next time, don't be careless. But he told the guy, lift it up. And there's a sense of trust. The guy just reaches out. Could have said, what are you saying? He threw the stake and he tells him, lift it up. He is empowered. So even if he gives the story, you would be saying, I was able to pick it myself and get it out because of empowerment. Elisha didn't take that away from him, empowerment. In this process of demonstrating compassion, Elisha listened and gave timely response. He did not waste time, solved the problem, and he directed the mentee to the point. We live in a world where we have religious leaders that are imposters. We've all heard people who've been prayed for, and because they were not well, they were told they don't have enough faith. Why is that? It's because the one praying doesn't have the emotional courage to admit that even with prayer, you are not healed. And so they'll blame the other person. Colleagues, if you are a mentor and your mentee asks you about something and you don't have expertise in it, the magic word is referral. Referral. That's why you have us here. Referral. I'm going to go to that WhatsApp and check everybody and maybe confirm with Dr. Verena. Referral. When I tell my student, oh, I don't know that, but I think Dr. So-and-so knows that. There's a time he spoke about that. Let me talk to him. It's still me mentoring him because that's my network. There's no shame. The magic word is referral. Connect that person. That's why we have a network. And this is feedback for Dr. Verena and the others, that this does us great good. Because now I know more people than I knew before. And I know some people I can look for after this. And if my student needed anything, I can say, let me talk to a friend. Now write to you and explain to you what my student needs, and you might just help me to help my mentee. But it still be credit to me because I'm the one who knew you. There's no shame in it. But for us to do that, we must have self-awareness. Self-awareness. Sometimes we give vague directions, we delay matters just because we don't know what you're doing, but we can't say we don't know what you're doing. In fact, many times you resort to ridicule, and ridicule is a teaching method in Africa. I don't know if it's a teaching method elsewhere. A lecturer came to our class and said, if you ridicule a person, they change. You train them through ridicule. But it will wound someone. It's going to wound someone. If you look at a student in a class and you think, in order for me to put him in his place or her place, I'm going to ridicule the person, then they're not going to be happy. They'll just be doing your work to get their credit, but they will never consider you as a mentor because you didn't consider their emotional well-being. Ridicule is so great in Africa that if you are riding in a matatu, one of those vehicles that you see on the road, public service, and somebody is trying to sell you something and you say, you don't want it, they will say, just say you don't have the money. They are ridiculing you so that you can say, oh, can I look at the other one, so that you save your face. In fundraising in Kenya, some people use ridicule to get money. The friends of Dr. Verena come to the front and give your contributions, then I march forward. Oh, you're Agnes, a lecturer at School Christian University, and you only have 5,000. You must add. A whole doctor must add. Now, because I'm in front of the people, I'm supposed to add something. Okay, let me check my M-Pesa and add. I always tell my students, if you call me for your fundraiser and they say that, I'll say, okay, give me that so that I can check my, and then I'll walk out of the door. Because I know ridicule is a strong element that they use to put people down. Elisha could have used ridicule. We should stay out of it because we are trying to give students thick skin, but it doesn't always work. Some of these are really wounded. Theological training is more than the syllabus. It's more than just standing in front and teaching. And so in the New Testament, Paul in 2 Timothy 2:2 says, all the things you've heard me say in presence of many witnesses, entrust them to reliable people who will be qualified to teach others. And if you're doing exegesis on that, there's three things. The first one is the things, eclectic. Everything you've seen me do, everything you've heard me say, whether it's a rebuke, correction. The second one is reliable people. Some versions say men, but the word there in Greek is men, human beings, as opposed to women, or as opposed to animals. So there's no gender, there's no age, there's no race. Teach others. Again, it's everyone. And so your mentorship legacy doesn't have to be confined to your village, to your school, to a certain gender. You can go out because Paul gives us that permission. Now, may we not break the chain of mentorship we have inherited. And may we never be the weak link in that chain. And if we do not inherit any mentorship legacy, may we start demonstrating it now. So help us God. Amen.